good morning and welcome to Rising. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's another exciting day in Washington, D.C. with some of Trump's pointy confirmation hearings getting underway. The Pete Hegseth hearing is ongoing right now. Good to see you again, Niall. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's great to be with you, Robby, on yet another exciting day. Are there any other kind of days in Washington, D.C.?
No, only exciting ones.
Only exciting ones. So let's get to it. What is on your radar, Robby?
Well, longtime conservative Washington Post columnist Jennifer Rubin has finally had enough, quitting the mainstream newspaper yesterday. Now, I put conservative in scare quotes because she really wasn't conservative, not at least by the standards of today. If you say you're Republican, but you utterly despise Donald Trump and everything he stands for, that might make you ideal for a newspaper columnist gig, but it doesn't really mean you can be properly considered as on the right anymore. The Washington Post, the New York Times, and other legacy media outlets love to heap praise and well-paying commentary jobs on never-Trump Republicans like Rubin, even though they represent almost zero real voters. Indeed, to the extent that they're popular with anyone, is that their hatred of Trump is mostly for a liberal audience. Well, either Rubin is tired of WAPO or WAPO is tired of Rubin. The parting of the ways is likely due to Post owner Jeff Bezos declining to allow the paper to endorse Kamala Harris for president. Rubin thinks the way to effectively counter Trump and Trumpism is to denounce him in ever more strenuous terms. So she's striking off on her own to launch The Contrarian with Norm Eisen, a former White House ethics czar. The Contrarian will launch on Substack with all sorts of content. Check out this video announcement.
Hi, I'm Jen Rubin.
And I'm Norm Eisen.
I am here to announce I am leaving the Washington Post in order to co-found with Norm an exciting new online platform, The Contrarian. We are going to bring you written material, podcasts, interviews, social media, all in defense of democracy. Our intent is to combat the authoritarian force that we all face. To help us, we have an exciting array of contributors from all walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds to help us in this venture.
We're going to do politics, we're going to do law, but we know that any successful pro-democracy movement also has to be very vocal about culture. We'll have a humor column. We'll even have a cooking column, but we're going to sprinkle in a little bit of pro-democracy flavor.
And we're going to have pets. We're very pro-pets.
I'm expecting all the edgy contrarianness of like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I know I only want to read pop culture and food content if it includes some heavy-handed pro-democracy messaging. But look, in all seriousness, if Rubin, for some reason, thinks that our media ecosystem really needs yet another media outlet designated to bashing Trump as a menacing threat to democracy, go forth. I think that market's a bit saturated, but who knows? Now, one thing she can't do, however, is take the position that her work is contrarian. I object to that word, which is the name of her new publication. It's an ill-fitting one. Nothing Jennifer Rubin has ever done is contrarian. Indeed, her entire career has involved reflecting a kind of establishment beltway conservative consensus that was totally at odds with what actual Republican voters want and value. Her knee-jerk opposition to everything Trump says, does, and represents isn't contrarian at all. It's the de facto and dominant opinion among newspaper columnists, elite tastemakers, and mainstream media news pundits. To the extent that Jennifer Rubin has said, written, or done anything one can describe as contrarian, or at least spicy, it was probably this.
You can't talk broad themes. You have to boil it down to nuts and bolts, and you have to be pithy. What do I mean by pithy? How about this? Republicans want to kill your kids. It's actually true.
Kill your kids. Now, who's Jennifer Rubin involving in this new project? Some of the least contrarian thinkers and writers and pundits there are. A press release announcing the new publication lists Lincoln Project founder and career grifter George Conway, satire writer Andy Borowitz, one of the least funny people to ever somehow stumble into a job. There are MSNBC and ex-WAPO talking heads. Look, many of them people who've done perfectly fine work. I respect them as commentators, but they are hardly an example of contrarianism. Have any of these people ever taken a bold stance that was counter to the mainstream narrative? Did they dissent on a COVID-related topic, for instance? What about foreign policy? Have they ever dissented from the bipartisan blob advocating more interventionism, Ukraine, Israel, etc.? Of course not, because they are not real contrarians.
So, Robby, I suppose in this seat I'm supposed to defend Jennifer Rubin, and I'm not.
You don't have to do that.
I'm not in any great rush to do that. Look, I think there are two separate points. One is the validity or legitimacy of very vigorous criticism of Mr. Trump, and of course that is permissible as it would be of any political figure, and if it comes from an authentic and sincere place, I think that's fine. Like you, I have two issues with this announcement from Jennifer Rubin, which you have alluded to. The notion that she is a conservative writer, I mean, even beyond her views on Trump, she was at one point, I think, conservative many years ago. I have not seen her express any conservative opinion about anything in several years. Now, if she has, I will stand corrected. The other point is the contrarian point, which I started laughing about as soon as you started talking about it, because it is, I mean, whether her view of Trump is correct or not is, I mean, inevitably in the eye of the beholder. But to suggest that those views are contrarian when they are voluminously reflected on the airwaves of MSNBC, the airwaves of CNN, the editorial pages of the New York Times, the Washington Post, the New Yorker, etc., etc. And furthermore, it is not, I mean, there's a broader thing where she does not really buck the consensus in any way at all. It's a very, liberal anti-Trump consensus that she completely caters to. I don't know. I think I met her once briefly. She was a perfectly pleasant woman. But
I met her once briefly. She was nice, yeah.
But it's just the claim or the idea that she is bravely fighting against prevailing orthodoxies or has ever recently been a conservative voice. I think both those claims are ludicrous.
And this media space is pretty crowded for just over-the-top, anti-Trump, I would say hysteria. You might say legitimate criticism. There are other outlets already doing this, even for, ostensibly, we are conservatives who hate Trump, your bulwarks, your dispatches.
Right.
Like, that market is pretty tapped out, I think. So I don't put a lot of faith in this project. Obviously, you can be successful on Substack with those views, or really any other set of views if you're, and she's productive. She blogs a lot for the Washington Post. I don't think very highly of the quality of the writing, but if she turns that out, she could do it, but it seems like a lot.
Yeah, I would say that I do think there are people who typically don't get maybe as much attention as the kind of never Trump people that we're talking about. There are Republican dissenters from Trumpism who I do think are sincere and acting in good faith and have not become Democrats out of their opposition to Trump, actually have conservative ideological positions and dislike Trump because of what they see as his narcissism, his lack of preparedness, etc., his, as they would say it, authoritarian tendencies. So I think that constituency does exist. I just don't think that, Jen Rubin and those other people are really part of it.
I mean, it's a small constituency. I mean, there are definitely Republicans who are like, yeah, Trump is not my favorite. He's not an ideal vehicle for these views. I find some of his personal behavior obnoxious. I think that's different from and I oppose him, and I must be against him from within the Republican Party. There is much less outright opposition. There's almost none within the party itself now. That was not true 4 years ago, 8 years ago. There was actual active opposition to him within the party. But he won, and he's more popular. You can't even argue that without him, the Republican Party would be better in shape. You could make that argument in 2020 because some of the other candidates, the Senate candidates, et cetera, performed better on the ballot. This time, he outperformed everybody else on the ballot in the own party. So it is remarkable how much he has remade the Republican Party in a. He's really taken off the table. We've mentioned this before. Are you for or anti-Trump? Mm-hmm. That's really not an issue now in the Republican Party. Within the Republican Party. Certainly there are plenty of people outside the Republican Party who don't like Trump. So now the issue is actually the issues reflected on some of these debates between the more tech Elon type people and your Steve Bannon people. That's spilling out into the open again with Steve Bannon denouncing Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, it's an interesting debate. I'm more on the Elon Vivek side of this, so it's interesting to see who's going to come out on top. But whoever comes out on top, they're going to be saying nice things about Donald Trump.
Probably so.
Well, we've got a lot more Rising to get to today. We'll be looking at the Pete Hegseth confirmation hearings and a bunch of other exciting subjects. Stay tuned.